The second part of chapter 4 is a little more detail about tailoring nutrients for athletes. So those that have to cut weight before an event, or just how do you provide enough energy and calories for a long event, a marathon or a running event. So basically, you're going to monitor your weight and your body fat because sometimes your weight could just be excess water if you've drank a lot of fluids. So if you have excess fat or not enough fat, you can adjust your weight. There is a desirable fat percentage for males and females that you need to keep track of. Females should not get below the 17 to 28%, even as athletes. All this is very individualized, but in order to be your best for an athletic event, it would be useful to look at how much carbs, how many vitamins, how much fat and protein you're getting. So there's a very scientific prescription if you want that you could follow. So for an athlete, 7 to 10 grams of carbs a day based on your body weight. For fats, 35% of your calories, and for protein, as much as 2 grams per kilogram, depending on your event. So those are things you can figure out. You can write up a diet. I'll show you in a minute how you count the carbohydrates to know what a gram is. You may need to increase B vitamins, folate, B6, B12, and possibly more vitamin E and C, which are both antioxidants. Excess or hard activity is actually an oxidative stress on your body, so you would need more antioxidants to help prevent damage to your cells. Also, you have to watch your fluid intake. It's important to know if you're getting enough replacement for what you've lost in the sweating of your exercise. So you can't just count on thirst. You could check your urine color. The darker, richer yellow, the more likely you're dehydrated. Other guidelines are just to make sure that you're drinking freely, the 6 to 8 cups a day before an event, and then 4 hours before the event, here's an actual amount of how many milliliters per kilogram you could figure in. An hour or so before you would have more, depending how long your event's going to be. And then after the event, also drinking to replace the lost water is very important. So that's another constituent you have to keep track of. So you want to prevent heat exhaustion, heat cramps, heat stroke. We talked about these in a previous chapter. All these can happen very quickly, and there's treatments that you can give if you have heat exhaustion. You might just have a little bit of confusion and some cramping. You would give a fluid with electrolytes. And then if you have a really serious heat stroke, when you notice a fever, you would obviously need medical help, and that's a very serious condition that you want to prevent. If you're in an activity that's more than 60 minutes long, then a sports drink or a drink with electrolytes. Now they're even recommended just chocolate milk is a good event or a good drink because it has the electrolytes in it as well as a little protein and the fluid. But whatever it is, you want to make sure you keep your electrolytes up. If it's less than a 60-minute event, then water is, they believe, based on research, adequate to fill your lost fluids. If you are losing large amounts of weight fast, like for a wrestler, that's pretty dangerous. They have had some deaths recently, or not, these aren't recent, but there are every so often deaths from athletes that try to lose too much weight too fast. And this dehydration or hypohydration, as they call it, can reduce your alertness and your decision-making times. It actually doesn't improve your performance if you get your weight too low too quickly. So that's the reason for hydration. Another possibility is carbohydrate loading. Some people find that this is a very helpful way to get the energy they need for a long-term exercise. So you could try increasing, like here's a little table that if you exercise like a week or 6 days before your event, you can exercise for the full amount, eat, sort of a normal amount of carbohydrate. But as the days come closer to your event, you would cut back on your exercise and increase your carbohydrate intake so that you would build up glycogen stores. So by the time that you're ready to do the event, you have a high level of glycogen in your muscles. So that's another possibility. Some people have tried the fat adaptation or ketogenic diets where instead of loading up on carbohydrate, they load up on fat, 60% instead of 35% from fat. And then after time, it's something you would take a little time to build up. You could actually, your body does adjust to using fat for fuel, being sure that A lot of the fat is actually stored in your muscle itself and the adipose. So it's mixed whether this works, but I know there are some athletes that have tried it. It's something to watch carefully. The other thing is if you are having an event, you want to know what to eat before, during, and after the event. So here's the pre-endurance event meal, suggesting light meals, not a lot of fat, not a lot of fiber, mostly carbohydrates, simple carbohydrates before the meal, with slight amount of protein. And then during the event, in order to keep going, if it's a long-term event, you might want to try some carbohydrate with a slight amount of protein, especially the isoleucine and leucine, which are branch chain amino acids. Those protein sources have been found to be effective for replenishing your fuel during the event. And then, of course, it's important after the event to also replenish the recovery. At that point, because your blood flow is high, your muscle cells have been active, you could actually put away a lot of glycogen after the event, which is sometimes hard to do because you don't have an appetite. But they suggest that, especially if you have another event coming up soon, that you would get a certain amount of carbohydrate for every 15 minutes if you have another event coming. And even if you don't, this is a good time to build your glycogen stores back with a small amount of protein. So those are some of the suggestions for athletes, specific suggestions that you can consider. And that will basically, there are a few more items, but that basically is the important part of Chapter 14, Part 2. Thank you.